Hello YouTube and welcome back to another Dare to Game video. Today we're playing Elden Ring and we're doing a build guide, and this one is going to be for my favorite 3 samurai builds. So these, you could call them the top 3 because I do consider them to be very good. I haven't compared them against every single samurai build anyone's ever made, so feel free to correct me down in the comments if you've got a better samurai build, because I always like taking a look at them. But we're going to be doing 3 builds that I think encapsulate the best way to play as a samurai in this game. And so I'll just show you all the stuff that makes up these guides. And of course, these are going to be extremely late game builds. Obviously, you can adapt them for any stage in the game. You just have to work with the skills that you have available to you. These do scale relatively well at almost any level. You're just going to have to make sure you prioritize the same types of skills for each build. So use the points as you have them. But that being said, we are going to be doing these at on my level 200 character on my New Game Plus 2 playthrough. So note that any damage I'm dealing to bosses will look lower on this playthrough than it would on like your first playthrough. Just keep in mind that the enemies are buffed in the New Game Pluses, and they just keep getting more and more buffed. So with all that in mind, let's just dive on in and start off with the first build, which you can see that I'm actually already equipped with, and it is the Quality Samurai. So this one is going to be the closest I could come to a pretty dang realistic samurai build. This one would be as close to, you know, kind of a real-life samurai as possible, so I focused on the type of skills, weapons, and I guess gameplay style that would be common of that. So if you're one of the players that likes to just go strictly sword and shield and bow kind of person, you know, not magic, not faith, not doing a bunch of gimmicky arcane or poison or whatever, just someone who wants to just straight up be a samurai, this is the build, the Quality Samurai. So just to start off looking at it from levels, obviously, like I said, I'm at level 200 here, so the distribution I've got is pretty typical of what I would consider a pretty good quality build. So we've got 65 points in vigor to give us plenty of health. No points in mind. This is a wretch build, so or starting off this was a wretch build, so we have 10 there in mind, but nothing extra in there because we're not going to be using magic at all. 65 endurance because on most of your samurai builds, especially the ones where you're dual wielding, which is my favorite way to play as a samurai, at least to some extent, you're going to need lots of stamina, and of course, it's always great to be able to move around really well. And so you can see I've got my endurance set to 65, and with a full suit of samurai armor, it actually keeps me in the light load class, so we can move really well in this armor if you have your endurance that high. So there's a lot of reasons to do it like that, but I think it's great to put plenty of points into endurance. Of course, as with any quality build, your 2 main areas are going to be strength and dexterity, so I actually have 80 in both of those, so obviously that's really high level. Then nothing for intelligence, faith, and I guess I put 1 point in arcane just because I had an extra point and I wanted to keep all my numbers round, and I guess arcane was the one that was the odd man out. As far as equipment goes, again, we're going to be sticking with as little gimmicky stuff as possible, so you can see it all laid out here before you. My primary weapon is going to be an uchi katana, and so on this one I put the Stormcaller Ash of War, and I did that to the quality affinity. And now normally I wouldn't because it reduces your power a little bit, but I like that it puts both the strength and the dexterity scaling at B, and since I've got 80 in both strength and dex, it comes up with a really good result. So if you were going for a more heavy towards strength or heavy towards dex, the quality isn't the way to go, but if your dex and strength are balanced, then I find the quality affinity to be the best way to go. So that's why I did quality on it. I like the Stormcaller Ashes of War because it's got a pretty fun special attack that deals decent damage, but sticks with my theme of no extra magic or fire or blood or anything like that. Then for our offhand weapon, I want to use a Wakizashi dagger, and on this one I like to put the Bloodhound Step Ashes of War because it's one of my favorite things to put on a dagger. And now this one I almost considered doing the bleed affinity because it's a dagger, and so you kind of go for that anyway, but I wanted to keep it strictly quality, so I went with quality again, so we have that attribute scaling. And now I don't always, with a build like this, I usually just dual wield them and use them up close anyway, so I just use dual wielding attacks, and it takes a little while to get used to because there's a difference in range between the sword and the dagger, but you can obviously switch and just use it for sneak attacks or whatever, but it's mostly a roleplay thing for me at this point. So like I said, Bloodhound Step is nice if you're going to be using it for a dagger or just to help yourself move around the battlefield a little bit easier so you don't get hit as much. It's kind of dealer's choice for what Ashes of War you want to use on your Wakizashi. Then as a secondary weapon, I like to use a longbow for this because obviously samurai were famous wielders of a very unique type of longbow. Unfortunately, we don't have one in the game that's much like it, but the Albinauric bow is pretty nice, and I just like to put the Mighty Shot Ashes of War on it. So that's weapons for this build. For the armor, we're going to be going straight up Land of Reeds. I do the Land of Reeds altered because I don't like having all the extra feathery looking cape thing around it, but it's just Land of Reeds, so very standard there. And then for our talismans, we go with kind of my go-to for this type of a quality build, the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, which is going to give us a big boost to physical damage negation, which is nice because this armor, although looking very cool, doesn't have the best stats in the game. This helps quite a bit. The Claw Talisman, which enhances jump attacks. I do a lot of jump attacks with a build like this, so that's going to be a nice one. Bull Goat's Talisman is going to raise our poise, which is nice because, again, this suit of armor doesn't have a ridiculously good poise, so this will help to some extent. Some people would want to swap this out. That one I could see being swapped out for, I guess, anything that you may feel better about. If you went for Bleed Affinity, then Lord of Blood's Exaltation or whatever. This one would be the least important. I also considered the Green Turtle Talisman for stamina here, so you could go with lots of stuff. Then the Rotten Winged Sword Insignia. We're going to be dual wielding and going for rapid strikes on this, so this one greatly raises your attack power with successive attacks. Kind of a no-brainer, in my opinion there. Obviously, if you're going to do a Summon Ash, then the Mimic Tier is a great one to go with, because it's just going to make 2 quality samurai there. Other than that, Black Knife Tish or Dung Eater, any of the real great summoning ashes will be good. For my Wondrous Physic, I like to do a little fun one here. We have the explosive, the Ruptured Crystal Tier for both of them, so we get a big old powerful explosive. I call it the Kamikaze. I think it fits rather well. But yeah, that is equipment for the build. As far as using this build in combat goes, it's not going to be gimmicky. It's going to be just straight up physical damage is mostly what we're going for. Jumping attacks are going to have that big boost because of our talisman setup. Obviously, with a build like this, it's going to be great if you can just, if you have the slower moving bosses, then the nice thing about having a light build like this is you can really move around in these bigger bosses, and not take nearly the amount of damage that I normally do, because I can actually, well, I mean, not that. That was a really bad job of dodging attack. But, like I said, it's just a good base level build that, like I said, even on later game like this, New Game Plus 2, where the enemies have considerably more damage, it's just a very good bread and butter build that works under almost any circumstance. Since it's not based on gimmicks or a big process of casting a bunch of spells, it's just a very solid build. So yeah, that is the quality samurai build, the first one I wanted to show you. Now let's move on to some more of the gimmicky ones. Alright, so our next one is the Intelligent Ronin, and now I've been informed by supposedly credible sources online that I have no reason to doubt that a Ronin is just a samurai without a master, and so I decided to make that one the magic-based one, because it just seemed right. So this one is going to be our intelligence based samurai build, one where we're going to incorporate a lot of magic into it, and that's kind of going to be the crux of it. And for this one, I chose to go with the Ronin stuff just because, other than the whole role-playing thing about the whole samurai without a master stuff, I think the outfit kind of looks the most, I guess, mysterious out of all of them. It's probably mostly coming from the Iron Casa because it's this big old basket-shaped helmet on the head that really blocks everything and kind of makes you look like a wizard. So that's probably why I went with it. As far as stats for this one, again, we're going to be at level 200, and this is the way I've got the points distributed for this specific build. So you can see I've got 51 points in Vigor, 30 in Mind, 50 in Endurance, 40 in Strength, 70 in Dexterity, and 70 in Intelligence. Yeah, that's how I've got the points distributed for this build. As far as equipment for this build goes, our primary weapon is going to be the moonveil katana, and now I like this one here because of the transient moonlight special attack. It does quite a bit of damage, and also staggers the enemy rather well. And in addition to that, the sword is just a really good sword. It does have requirements, including intelligence, but this is an intelligence-based build, so that one shouldn't be a problem. Attribute scaling when we have it maxed like this is Dexterity and Intelligence are B, so those are going to be your primary ones, and that's pretty good scaling to have a dual B scaling. And then, like I said, there is a strength scaling of E, so that strength scale does also help. This one also causes a blood loss buildup. That's just built right in. So the moonveil is the main weapon. For our secondary weapon, I almost went with another moonveil just because, obviously, if you have two of the same ones, it's easy to focus your skills specifically on it, and, you know, the scaling is great, and the moonveil is a great katana. But if we go with the Uchi katana, we can add the glint blade phalanx Ash of War and give that the cold affinity, which is going to give us an additional frost buildup of 105, which is great. That's a nice frost buildup. And we also have that blood loss buildup from the Uchi like that it normally has. And if we put the glint blade phalanx on there, that's a great attack that can be used offhand, and it doesn't go away when you go back to two-handing, so you can just cast that before you go into combat. It has great stagger ability, so it's one of my favorite magical Ashes of War to put on a weapon. So that's why I like doing the cold Uchi katana as my offhand weapon instead of another moonveil. Then for a staff, because we are going to do some casting with this one, or it's great to at least have the option, I, of course, want the Carrion Regal Scepter. If you've got this and you have a magic level high enough to use it, or an intelligence level, I should say, high enough to use it, because it does have a 60 intelligence requirement, then it's the best option. Otherwise, the Academy Glintstone Staff is another great option, or pretty much anything, and a lot of that's going to depend on what type of sorceries you want to pair with this. But for my specific build, and if you've got the stuff to do it and you have it, the Carrion Regal Scepter is the best choice. It just has the best sorcery scaling. Then our armor is going to be just straight up the Ronin set, so we have the Iron Casa, Ronin's Armor, Ronin's Gauntlets, and the Ronin's Greaves. Then for our talismans, we're going to do the Green Turtle Talisman, because this build is a stamina sucker, so having this on there and making your stamina recover significantly faster is a huge benefit, because you're going to use a lot of stamina with this build. The Carrion Filigreed Crest is always a great choice because it lowers the FP consumed by skills, and we're going to be using our skills quite a bit with this, especially that moonveil with the transient moonlight is going to be a big thing that we're using a lot of, so it's great to have that because this is just going to take down the FP so we don't have to refill it as much. Shard of Alexander is going to be another great one because it's going to greatly boost the attack power of your skills, so when we're using that, or we're using the Glintblade Phalanx, it's going to give us that sweet boost that makes them significantly more powerful, so the Shard of Alexander is a great choice. And again, the Magic Scorpion Charm is going to be perfect because it's going to raise your magic attack and lower your damage negation for it. And for our Wondrous Physic, the two halves that I like to put in there are the Magic Shrouding Crack Tier, which is going to temporarily boost our magic attacks, and the Stone Barbed Crack Tier, which is going to temporarily make stance breaking easier. So that's great because a big part of this one is staggering our enemies and then just spamming the dual wielding attack on them, because once they're staggered they can't defend it and you can inflict an immense amount of damage really quickly. So that's the physic mix that I like to go with. So when we're about to go into combat, we can just get our Glintblade Phalanx ready, drink our Wondrous Physic. Oops, I might have gotten the Glintblade Phalanx ready a little bit too early. And you can see how much incredible damage we can do extremely quickly. So the Phalanx and then the Transient Moonlight just does an immense amount of stagger to them, and then we're just able to shred them up with the dual wielding after that. So it's an incredibly effective build that I love using. And here we'll show you against a boss that's maybe a little bit harder to stagger. Yikes, he still hit us. See? And now he's down and out. And boom, we dual wield him to death. So like I said, it's as far as gimmicky magic type builds go, this one's great. You can use it for magic. Like I said, I like to pair a staff with it, just because that way I have the ranged option and you can be somewhat of like a samurai spellblade mage kind of build. But you totally don't need to. It works very well. There's very few steps to it. Like I said, you use your Wondrous Physic if you want. You don't even need to use it. You just two-hand your offhand weapon, get your Glintblade Phalanx ready, switch back to dual wielding, then you can blast him with your Glintblade Phalanx, hit him with the Transient Moonlight, and then you just, generally speaking, you only have to, for most bosses, you hit them once with the Transient Moonlight, and after the Glintblade Phalanx, they're staggered, and you can either crit attack them, or just dual wield, hack and slash them, or you can just keep smashing them with the Transient Moonlight. Like I said, it's just a really powerful, really consistent build that's a lot of fun to play with. So that is my Intelligent Ronin build. Let's move on to my final Samurai build for today. Alright, and so for our third one here, we're going to have probably the most stereotypical one, which is going to be our Arcane Bleed build. So we have the Arcane Whitelands Samurai, or White Reedlands, or whatever, you know, wherever these people are from. So you can see that we're going for, like I said, it's pretty stereotypical as far as bleeds go, but this build is pretty fun, and it's got some unique aspects about it, particularly like weapon choice and stuff. So pretty cool looking in my opinion. Only thing is we're not using the Okina mask. You can see we have the white mask here, but obviously we have that for the boost that it gives us. But other than that, pretty stereotypical, just standard White Reed's armor. Alright, so starting off with our stats. Again, level 200 build here, and so the points I have distributed are for a level 200 build. Obviously, if we're doing it at a lower level, you just have to, you have less points to spend, but you still prioritize in the same areas. So our top priority here is going to be Arcane. We have 80 points into Arcane because we're going to want to get as much bleed build up as we can, and that's going to help with the scaling for that. Then our next biggest one is going to be Dexterity. We have 70 points into that, and then after that, Vigor, Endurance are going to be your kind of next most important ones, and then once again, strength is going to have some importance because the weapons do also scale with strength, so the higher that is, the better they're going to do physical damage-wise. As far as equipment goes, there are options, okay? So you could obviously go with Rivers of Blood. If you do Rivers of Blood, you'd not only have the physical and the bleed, which is what we're going for, but you also get fire damage. So then the build would look a little bit different because you might want to use some talismans or spells or something that give you a boost for fire damage. And I find that Rivers of Blood, especially at a lower level, is probably a better option. But once you're up to a high level like this, so for an endgame build, I find that if you use the Nagakiba, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and you put Bloody Slash on your primary one and Seppuku on your secondary one, it makes an incredibly powerful build. For one thing, your blood loss buildup is a lot higher. By putting these Ashes of War on here and giving them the blood affinity, you give it arcane scaling of D, which I think is the same as the Rivers of Blood. I could be wrong on that, but it does give you an arcane scaling as well as your dex and strength, and then your dexterity is going to be B, which is going to that's why dexterity is so important. But instead of having the lower blood loss buildup that the Rivers of Blood has, you have 115 points of it with each of these if you do it this way at max, so these are both plus 25, which gives you a lot faster blood loss buildup. So it's almost twice as effective as the Rivers of Blood. Now, obviously, like I said, Rivers of Blood also has fire, and so you can specialize into that, and you may not be able to get 2 Nagakibas up to plus 25 early game, so like I said, it really depends on your level and specialization. But if you can, I think the Nagakibas like this work better, because A, you can upgrade them with Ashes of War like this, whereas you can't do that with the Rivers of Blood. Plus, these have the advantage of being either the second longest after the Hand of Melania or the longest. I haven't quite figured out which one has slightly better reach, but they're both very close. So these ones give you significantly better reach than most of the katanas, which is why I like them over the Uchi katanas for this build. So yeah, that's your primary weapons, and it's just going to be one of those in each hand. Like I said, primary being Bloody Slash, secondary being Seppuku. Then for our armor, like I said, it's white reed armor for the gauntlets, greaves, and the chest armor. And then for the helmet, instead of the Okina mask, we're using the white mask, and that's because it gives us that sweet bleed advantage, which I obviously really like for this build. Then for our talismans, we're going to start with the Shard of Alexander, because that's going to greatly boost the attack power of skills. So anytime we're using our skills on these, which is going to be Bloody Slash, which is one of my favorite special attacks, and the Seppuku, we're going to get a sweet boost to that. Ritual Sword Talisman, which raises attack power when your HP is at maximum. So most of the game, your HP is probably going to be up at the top. It's only like during boss fights or like when you're being just mobbed by a crowd of mob type enemies that it's going to be lower. So you're going to have that initial boost to your attack power whenever your HP is at maximum. The Rotten Winged Sword Insignia greatly raises the attack power with successive attacks. Again, we're going to be dual wielding, so we're going to be doing a lot of successive attacks. So that's going to be a sweet boost to our attack power. And then the Lord of Blood's Exaltation, which just the blood loss in vicinity increases attack power, and since this build is entirely surrounded on blood loss, it makes perfect sense that we'd be using that. For our Flask of Wonders Physic, I don't have one that I specifically need to use with this build because it's really not about magic or potions or anything, but I do like to have this one as my kind of go-to for builds like this. So I have the Opaline Hard Tier and the Opaline Bubble Tier. The Hard Tier temporarily boosts all your damage negation, and the Bubble Tier significantly negates damage received. So both of those ones are going to be great for going into boss fights and stuff, because it's just going to make you take less damage. So obviously when you have prep time for a boss fight, it's best to initiate all your stuff first, so we get our Seppuku going on. Then we're going to want to heal the life that took away, take our physic, and then we're basically ready to go. So once that starts, then we can obviously, you see how much damage we did there? Alright, well maybe that enemy was a little too weak, but I mean, it still does shine a light on exactly how overpowered a build like this can be. Here we should have an enemy that's maybe a little bit tougher for us to fight. So we'll get our Seppuku going on. It does make most boss fights. Now, obviously, these aren't endgame bosses. These aren't, this isn't Star Scourge Radon or Melania or something like that. But the builds do have significant strength against most enemies in the game. Here we go. Here's an actual boss fight. This should be a better sign of it. So we'll do our Seppuku, and we should be ready to go. So let's see how we do against an actual boss fight. 2,000 damage right off the bat, not bad. Alright, Royal Knight Loretta did the best against us so far. So, As you may be able to tell, obviously there's a reason so many people do Arcane and Bleed builds. They are just ridiculously powerful. And as far as a really fun Bleed build to use with the Samurai, this is my favorite. I used to do a Rivers of Blood build, but now this one has surpassed it for me. I absolutely love this build. It's extremely fun to use, and it's extremely powerful. So that is all three of my favorite, or you might call them the top best Samurai builds, or whatever it may be. Those are three excellent Samurai builds to play as late game. So I hope you enjoyed the video, hope you found it useful, but we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching another Dare to Game video. If you liked this video, please leave a like and a comment. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you like my content and would like to support this channel, consider becoming a member today for as little as $1.99 a month. It makes a huge difference. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you next time.